part of our program, we'll be beginning the action panel. And these are folks from various organizations. You'll be hearing about action. They're all faith-based as well, but these are folks involved in specific environmental initiatives that will be interesting to, I think, all of our participants. And at the conclusion of their presentations, we will be getting into breakout rooms where all of our participants will be able to join one of the panelists in our array and hear more and talk in a smaller group about their initiatives. And so welcome all of our panelists to this action panel part of our program. And I'm going to begin by reading the guiding question that was given to all the action panelists in preparation for today's work. And the question is this: given that the climate crisis is a moral and existential threat, what faith-based hope and actions can we take to get involved, stay engaged, and work collaboratively toward climate solutions? So that's our question. And our first panelist that's going to be presenting today is our friend Russell Beard, who is an enrolled member and elder of the Duwamish tribe, and he's a fifth generation descendant of the Duwamish diaspora. Russ currently serves on the board of directors of the Duwamish Tribal Services, which is the nonprofit arm of the Duwamish tribe, which aims to promote the cultural heritage, engage in environmental stewardship, educational activities, and tribal member support services. And my panelists will also have 5 minutes each to speak, or 6 minutes, and after 5 minutes, I'll give them a little notification that they have a minute left.
Let me ask quickly, can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can see you.
Wonderful. Well, as mentioned, Russ Beard and Ken and I are actually fifth cousins. I'm descended from Seattle's younger brother, Sequardle. So we found ourselves much later in life. So let me begin my discussion on environmental justice. Don't reach for your calculus books because I made this equation up. But if you looked at where our faith and our hope added together and multiply that by our actions, we will acquire or reach some kind of delta, which is a change. And it's important to understand that delta is not a destination. The change is not a destination, but it's a process. And think of the process as policies that are going to be put in place. And these policies are going to change the course in the future. It's the only constant. Human activity can affect the change of the size of the delta. If you look at what environmental justice is defined at, I took 3 examples, one from the government, EPAs, another from Greenpeace as activists, and a third from Columbia University. And the common thread is that environmental justice is the fair treatment across demographics, across people of differing races, colors, origin, national income, with respect to the development of these policies. That's the common thread. Excuse me 1 second, I just lost my, there we go, timed out on me. So the question we would ask is, what can faith-based individuals such as ourselves, congregations, parishes, synagogues, temples, tribes, mosques, the wide spectrum, if you will, how can we respond to the existential threat? The International Union of for Conservation of Nature is another excellent website that will give you direction, if you will, focuses on outreach to faith-based institutions, movements, and various networks. So what I try to do in this presentation is give you a roadmap, if you will, of various websites that you can go to see where can you connect with these individual actions and further your individual organizational activities. So what guides us? And this was taken from the American Progress Organization. It's the moral voice. How do we provide a moral voice to the climate change crisis? As many of our faith panelists mentioned, almost every holy text has a mandate to protect creation and help those in need. And the moral imperatives are the strong action to address the climate change crisis, as there's more than 1 billion impoverished people across the world and in the United States. And unfortunately, they will become the refugees of climate change, those that don't have the money or the economy, the economics to escape from situations of variability. Actions that we can take now to create, if you will, that delta, that change. These are things that your organizations or you individually can do. And it includes building sustainable sanctuaries. Congregations are going green, turning their buildings into energy efficient buildings. You can make pulpit pledges every time we meet in the organizational entities. How do we make the pulpit pledge to get the message across to our congregations? Gathering for eco-friendly holy dinners, going vegetarian, observing a low-watt Shabbat, where you literally set down your carbon footprint for the period of the Sabbath, such that you're making a change individually. Going green for Lent. As an Episcopalian, what do we give up for? I always give up something for Lent. How can I reduce my carbon footprint? My big peeve, casting SUVs aside. Use e-bulletins and eco-cups internally and externally. There are ways that we can cut down and reduce waste. Churches all over the country are restoring prairie lands and other wilderness areas and bringing back the ecosystems that have been affected by climate change. And it's important for national partnerships and advocacy. We can't just think of ourselves as isolated islands or isopods, if you will. We can join with scientists, and I'm a scientist, to devise concrete actions. What's driven me in my science is what I call my muscular faith. Being raised as a Christian, my faith has always driven the decisions I make when it comes to how would I act as a scientist. Creating of the youth movement. I think that was mentioned in one of the earlier videos. You've got to get the youth involved. Demand comprehensive and conscientious climate change, and you've got to move Congress and President. Nothing's going to be done without that. So in closing, how does our faith combined with science, technology, legislation, how do you work with individuals, groups, and organizational efforts at local, regional, and national and global scales so that you get the social, cultural, and political change that addresses the threat of climate change? And in closing, what that really means is policy responses need to be understood not only for civilization's self-interest, but they should be demanded for basic morality. If you look at the 50 years, and I've been involved now, I'm 70 years old, been involved for 40 plus years in oceanography and meteorology, what's missing is the ethical dimension of climate change policy. They're ignoring, up until recently, the actual arguments about what is ethically right about concerning and what to do in climate change. How do the ethical arguments shape our policy? And remember that climate change is a global solution, and we have to encourage the world to seek a morally acceptable solution to climate change. That should be part of the goal of climate policy, a morally accepted solution because it's the right thing. And history shows us that ethical arguments have been successful in causing needed social change and social movements to include civil rights, women's rights, human rights across the world. Why not environmental rights for the underserved? And I close with that.
Thank you, Russell. That was beautiful. Let's take a moment to absorb what Russell has shared here. And our next panelist is Libby Carr. And Libby has worked on the staff of Vista, Sierra Club, and Washington Mend, and has been working with numerous environmental organizations as a volunteer as well. As a board member of Meaningful Movies, Libby understands the power of film to educate and motivate people. Welcome, Libby. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Sally Jo, and all of you for showing up today. This is a very exciting opportunity we're doing here, but it's a process that we're doing here today, and that's being in community with each other, but sharing ideas and tools, and most of all, sharing our hope. A couple of years ago in Marjorie's group at St. Mark's, where I'm also a parishioner, I met Scott Henson when he did a workshop for Marjorie's climate creation care ministry. And he's the guy who thankfully turned me on to the film 2040. And that was like the cliff notes for Project Drawdown in a visual way. And we're such a visual society. And then the other clip Scott turned me on to was the one we saw about Will Grant. Well, I was quite familiar with level 1 and level 4, working on various projects through my 40 years as a climate activist. It became apparent that levels 2 and 3, but especially level 3, that there are local institutions that we can all reach out to. And we've got a great example of that right now in Seattle. The Seattle School District has been talking about putting solar panels on the schools of Seattle. Now, I'm not sure exactly where that is right now, but I know that it's being talked about and they've been holding hearings on it and such. But that, I mean, if we can just think about the impact of that, that would be such a huge statement, not only to the city of Seattle, but to other school districts throughout the country, to the kids, because the schools belong to the kids and their parents. This would be such a great way to say we can do something about climate change. And the importance of this is that before I really became aware of these tools, the 2040 film, drawdowns research, I was pretty pessimistic. I pretty much had my well of hope was definitely low because it just seemed like too big. We had procrastinated too long and we're in too much trouble. But thank God I have studied the drawdown research, which is absolutely incredible. Paul Hawken is a genius to hold all of this together. And Jonathan Foley, the executive director now, has just done wonders to communicate what a valuable tool the drawdown organization is. So my message of how to be a climate activist, the easiest way I can think of is simply to use these 3 tools, all of which are accessible on your computer. And all of us know people who probably have not seen these tools and who are feeling pretty pessimistic and depressed. And we all know that that reverts us to the reptilian brain that says, well, let me just go back to bed and pull the covers over my head. We're all going to die anyway, so what's the use? Well, I'm sorry. That's not permissible for any of us, and especially because of future generations. So I would just say that to be a climate activist is simply to look around you, talk to your friends, and then find groups that you are already a part of that you can move in as an individual at the right time. Maybe they're looking for a speaker, whatever that is, and you have tools at your disposal in these 3 films that we decided to make the keynote speakers. And I encourage you to become, as you already are, I know many people on this call already are activists, but these tools can make you even much more of one. And we all have that responsibility. So I'll look forward to as many of you who want to be in my small group, and I'll want to hear about your activism activities as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Libby. This is wonderful how everything seems to be dovetailing into everything else. And this is part of our purpose here today. So our next panelist speaker is Marjorie Ringness. And she comes to us from St. Mark's Episcopal Cathedral, where she helped revive the Carbon Care Ministry there in 2019. This organization has hosted forums, workshops, and experiences to bring awareness of the climate crisis to the St. Mark's community. Marjorie, welcome.
Well, thank you, Sally Jo, and thank you to Northwest Interfaith for inviting me to be part of this panel. I'm part of the Creation Care Ministry at St. Mark's, not the Carbon Care Ministry, but
My bad.
I also want to be very clear that it's not Marjorie's ministry at St. Mark's. It's a really strong group of wonderful people. But we, St. Mark's, made a commitment a couple of years ago to become a carbon neutral congregation by the year 2030. And I think a lot of people thought of that as a pie in the sky idea, but with commitment and actions, we feel it's very possible. But that includes the facilities at St. Mark's and also the community of St. Mark's, the 400, 500 families that are part of St. Mark's Cathedral. And so to answer that question, that guiding question about what faith-based hope and actions can we take to get involved, stay engaged, and to work collaboratively towards solutions, I went back to the framework that we have done in the last couple of years at St. Mark's, a very pragmatic approach, I guess, but there was kind of 5 areas that we did to create a framework that included planning, education, inspiration, actions, and then collaboration. And so in the planning, we realized early on that we needed a vision and a mission and objectives just to help us focus on this enormous problem and how to help our congregation to become more aware. And so we created those objectives. We established a strong connection with our leadership and clergy staff at vestry at St. Mark's, and have enjoyed really strong support from the clergy, as well as the staff and vestry. We created some subcommittees to do work in between our monthly meetings so that things actually get done. And we're looking more towards specifics about some of that long range planning. Regarding awareness and education, as Sally mentioned, we've hosted some forums and some film screenings. We have really improved our website presence on the St. Mark's Cathedral website, which I think has really been helpful. And then relating to inspiration, we feel we need that hope to be grounded in faith. And so we did things like Lenten prayer cards with related scriptures, other prayers, liturgies that went along with an intergenerational hike we did last month. Those are just some examples of things we've done. The actions that we do, we focus on doing actions collectively because we all know that doing our each little individual actions sometimes feels like it's not enough. And so some of those actions might be political advocacy projects. We're hoping to develop a stronger relationship with the Duwamish tribe, whose land we meet on. We have projects going around our church grounds, like installing the EV station, and the facilities themselves are going through quite an extensive upgrade to reduce our carbon footprint. We get outside in nature together. And one of the things we're going to be talking about the main thing we will be talking about in our breakout group is about the carbon tracker that we are using. To help our households reduce their own individual carbon footprints. And Lisa Altieri was the developer of that carbon tracker tool, and she's going to be going into much more detail in the breakout session about using that tool and how any organization, any faith community, or any individual organization can work collaboratively to measure their carbon footprint and encourage each other that way. The carbon tracker tool focuses on household emissions, which account for something like 40% of greenhouse gas emissions in the US. So it's a major step. And then the last thing we focus on, or we are focusing on it at St. Mark's, is collaboration to expand our impact beyond St. Mark's. Collaboration with other Episcopal parishes, with other faiths, with outside organizations, again, with tribes, specifically the Duwamish, and within our civic community. We see ourselves at St. Mark's as very visible in the city of Seattle. And so we think that's important. So please join us during the breakout session. And I have no idea how much time I took, but there you go. Thank you.
That was perfect. Thank you so much, Marjorie. Let's take a moment to process and be grateful for all this wonderful information. And our next panelist then is Kathy Delbecq, who participates in the Creation Care Network in Seattle, also the Multifaith Network for Climate Justice in Bellingham, and her parish Creation Care Ministry. In 2020, she completed the Global Catholic Climate Covenants Laudato Si Animators Training. So Kathy, it's all yours. And I see you're sharing your screen, so we'll give you.
I am. You know, I always have to wonder about this. Let's see if I can make that go down. Sorry.
Go into from beginning over there on the.
Oh, yes, but I have to, you know, this, I think this is what I have to do here. Oops, no. Okay, does that work? Yes?
That's good, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So thank you, Sally Jo, and also thank you to the conference organizers, John Hale, and the members of the Northwest Interfaith Board. I have to say that I'm very grateful for this opportunity to share the work of the Creation Care Network, and also for the personal reflections that my preparation for this has required. So I went back to the Project Drawdown Will Grant discussion and asked these questions of myself. And for purposes of our breakout group, these will be framing our discussion. And so the idea of Will Grant's presentation or discussion is, where is my community? Where am I known as a person? Where am I connected? And can I talk to these people? And one of the places where I can answer yes to all of these questions, of course, is my church. And as a Catholic, the guiding document that is a part of our church is the Laudato Si document that Pope Francis published in 2015, asking us to be considerate of the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. This encyclical was addressed to every person living on this planet, clearly framing the crisis, the ecological crisis that we are experiencing right now, as a summons to a profound interior conversion, that this is the wastelands that are growing on earth are represented by the wastelands that are growing within our hearts. And our faith traditions have the language to speak to this, which is why the faith communities have become so important in this conversation. We can speak of greed. We can speak of loss and lament. We can speak with words of hope and gratitude, abundance and support, power and our interconnectedness. This is our language. We know this language. We don't necessarily know the language of degrees centigrade and gigatons of carbon, but we do know the language of interconnectedness. And it has been said that the COP26 begins tomorrow. And one of the most important things that I think we can do as activists right now is to pray for that conference, to pray for the people who are attending and will be making decisions that are so key to the future that we will share together and our next generations will have. Also, there is a youth hunger strike happening right now, starting October 20th. Sunrise Movement has this, and if you're inclined to support them, I would encourage you. I think for me, my generation, I'm older, we need this, we need these messages of connectedness to the earth. Our children, our youth get this. And I hope to be supportive of them in learning about this and helping them make progress, but knowing that they are mostly leading us. The Creation Care Network is a collaborative effort between the parishes in the Archdiocese of Seattle. It also includes universities and institutions and other organizations, Catholic organizations in the Seattle area. And, you know, as Marjorie was saying, reaching out and making that network happen. So as a phase 3 or level 3 organization in Will Grant's presentation, we're trying to find our voice and move out from that. So members of various parish creation care teams and these other organizations are meeting now once a month with Patrick Barretto, who is the convener of this group. And our hope is to get support from the Archdiocese of Seattle, from Archbishop Etchen, and also to get those efforts out to the people that are attending these meetings and out to our individual parishes. And so I am in Bellingham, Washington. The majority of these groups that are people that are meeting are coming from Seattle parishes. We started with 6 people, and we are now currently inviting over 40 people to come and attend. And not only do we have our parish representatives or participants, we also have people from Seattle University, the Inter-Community Peace and Justice Center, Catholic Climate Covenant, which is the national organization on Catholic climate. Mary Noel Ann is here with us today. Drawdown Seattle, Scott Henson has been here with us today. So we are supported by that. It started as a new solidarity of creation in 2015 with the Pope's letter, and it is now the Creation Care Network. What have we been doing? In January, we hosted the movie 2040. We were able to have it available for a couple of weeks and then hosted a discussion afterward for one evening. In March and April, we created a letter to the Archbishop, not thinking we would be able to get a meeting because he's a very busy person. But we wrote a letter asking him to prioritize creation care for the Archdiocese of Seattle and the churches of Western Washington. We were able, with Scott Henson's help again, to distribute this letter electronically and collect over 400 signatures. And this letter was offered to the Archbishop on Earth Day. We've had conversations about the legislative priorities January through April, and encouraged information getting out to the parishes as well. So the main goal is to share our activities, discuss what we're doing, and support and encourage one another. Many times representatives of parish care creation teams are not necessarily lone wolves, but they're a minority trying to get this message out without a lot of support. And so we come together to provide that support for one another. And so we're our own little encouragement team. This is a list of some of the things that we shared for Earth Day. Not so important, but it would give you an idea of the discussions that we've had, and more can be seen of this in the breakout. And the season of creation happens in September. And this was what we did for the season of creation. We hosted some opportunities in Seattle, but also, again, networking out the information and inviting other parishes to be a part of the activities that are going on. And we got our mission and vision and value statements together. Again, our priorities are inspired by the encyclical of Laudato Si. Everything is interconnected. and that genuine care for our lives and our relationships with nature is inseparable from fraternity, justice, and faithfulness to others. The response to Laudato Si, when it came out, touched the hearts of many, many faith traditions, but it also touched the secular environmentalists. And just to share a quote from Mary Evelyn Tucker, who is the founder of the Yale Forum on Religion and Ecology, she said that Laudato Si was a unifying document between environmentalists busy saving the planet and our species, and our church saving people, and a recognition that we cannot have healthy people without a healthy planet, and the environmental justice that will come from that. So what are we doing now? Soon to come is the Laudato Si Action Platform. It is a format to get the church on a 7-year journey of sustainability for Earth and all her inhabitants. And we have identified sectors and action items, and there will be a tremendous number of resources available. They aren't exclusively Catholic resources, and I would encourage you even now, if you're interested in another resource to add to your list, that this website, Laudato Si Action Platform, will have resources now. And the sectors include families, parishes, the diocesan, a diocese level, school levels, healthcare levels, organizational levels, knowing that a plan for the diocese is not going to look like the plan for your family around the kitchen table. So with that, I will encourage you to join us. We'll spend some time thinking about some of these ideas and sharing what we're doing. And the other thing I would like to say is that besides this organization in Seattle, I'm doing something similar with a group of people up in Bellingham, and it's called the Multifaith Network for Climate Justice. And we actually are also an affiliate of Earth Ministry, and Jessica is about to speak. And a number of folks from the Multifaith Network, as well as Creation Care Network, are here on this call. But the Multifaith Network for Climate Justice is doing a similar thing, and that it is trying to blend Creation Care team members and representatives from a variety of faith traditions and churches here in Bellingham. So instead of being within the church, which is where Creation Care Network is, it is trying to be inter-community, interfaith, multi-faith. And so that's another conversation or piece of information I could add to our breakout groups. So thank you again.
Thank you, Kathy. That was lovely. And it was a good segue to us also to our final panelist for this portion of the afternoon, who is Deaconess Jessica Zimmerle. And Jessica is the Program and Outreach Director of Earth Ministry, Washington Interfaith Power and Light. She supports faith communities through Earth Ministry / Washington Power, Interfaith Power and Light Greening Congregations program. And Jessica, it's all yours.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sally Jo. And it is a gift to get to bring us home here with our last action panel discussion. Again, my name is Jessica. My pronouns are she, her. I am on Duwamish land in North Seattle. And I am here today representing Earth Ministry, Washington Interfaith Power and Light. I see many familiar faces in the participant list and in our little boxes here. So good to see you and a joy to meet new friends. Earth Ministry WIPL is a multi-faith organization with the mission of transforming faith into action for the well-being of communities and the environment. And we do work across a spectrum of approaches of the 4 levels of activism. I do want to mention our Greening Congregations program, which this fall we are rolling out our first multi-faith expansion of this toolkit that provides a flexible framework for houses of worship to really commit to environmental stewardship and sustainability. We do have an event on that coming up on the 18th of November, so I will put all of this in the chat. But I just hearing the different levels had to share that before I speak to you about what I'm going to bring today on faithful advocacy. So that is looking more at that 4th level of action. And I have the joy of being in community and organizing together with people of all faiths on climate justice campaigns that align with our spiritual values and are also in partnership with the broader environmental movement. So Earth Ministry WIPO works on campaigns across issue areas, one of which is climate justice. And we do that with secular partners and coalitions. And we are really focused on how we show up as people of faith, specifically in these conversations in a way that's strategic and in line with our values. I do want to say how we show up really matters. I like to say that the climate crisis is a moral crisis, but how we address the climate crisis is also a moral issue. So it's paramount that we follow the lead of tribal nations like the Duwamish here in Seattle and frontline communities who are already feeling the impacts of the climate crisis first and foremost. So with that, I'm going to share my screen here and just share a little bit about faithful advocacy and some tools and tricks. Hopefully you can see my screen. I see a thumbs up from Sally Jo. Great. So what is advocacy? What are we even talking about, right? Advocacy is speaking up to influence political, economic, and social institutions. It's really getting at the root cause of an issue and addressing it through policy reform. And it could be called democracy in action, right? We can all participate at various levels, and it's a muscle to keep flexing at all parts of the year, not just election season, which I know is where we are at right now. But then what is faithful advocacy and how is it different? Faithful advocacy is really showing up, naming that you're a person of faith and speaking up for systemic change that is based on your religious values, teachings, and traditions. It is working together to co-create this just and loving society that all of our faith traditions call us to work towards. And ultimately, it's faith in action. Attributes of faithful advocacy that I experienced making it different from a secular approach is that we're really getting to the heart of it with values. So we want to move folks a bit from the head and into the heart when we show up and speak as faithful advocates. That is where change can really happen. At the end of a long day, a decision maker will remember a heart-wrenching story or personal experience that is shared much more than they'll remember any facts and figures. This also paints the picture of what future we do want to see. So we want to see a future that is embodying justice and equity, and we're hopeful that we can really get there. I think Anna spoke to this in the panel of the importance of hope in a faith-based approach, especially when the climate crisis can be so daunting. For me, coming from the Christian tradition, I believe God is really working through me, and that enables me to keep going. Faithful advocacy can also build bridges, and we can be a sort of mediating presence that can go across the aisle. We can hold space for dialogue and collaboration in a way that's different than our partisan world through which we walk. And then finally, it's supported by community. So when you show up as a faithful advocate and you share what your house of worship is, or what organization you are working through, that amplifies your message because they know that, okay, there's one person who thinks this, but they go to a house of worship where people gather around shared values. So it's a kind of amplifier effect. Community also just sustains this work, which again can be hard. So it gives you folks to work together with and to go to when times are hard. Overall, with faithful advocacy, the last thing I want to say, an attribute of it that I think is awesome, is you don't have to be an expert to show up as a faithful advocate. You're there to tell a story and to bring the values into the conversation. And so, of course, you want to know the baseline of information about the issue you're speaking to. But if you're asked a question that's really like a deep dive, I actually love when that happens because it gives me an opportunity to pull back and say, you know, I can get you in touch with somebody who can speak to the policy, but I'm here because I want a future for my godson where he has clean air and all the kids in his class don't have asthma. that's the future that I want to see and that I believe we're called to co-create. And then finally, just a little bit about that impact of faithful advocacy. So why bother, right? Some of us can feel like democracy is broken and what's the point? It's so important that we participate. So it's critical to remember that elected officials work for you. You voted to put them into office so that they could represent you, so they need to hear from you. And it doesn't take many voices for them to actually hear you. Studies show that it only takes 7 points of contact to create change in a decision maker's mindset. So that's not going to go straight from a no to a yes, but if somebody is a no, they might say, I should look more into this and maybe reconsider. And if somebody is already going to be supportive of a policy that you're advocating on, it's really important that you still contact them, because that could take them just from a yes vote to really championing the issue, which our stories really help our elected officials do. I've been told time and time again by legislators how powerful it is when we share stories as constituents that they then take to their colleagues and share on the floor of the Senate when the bill is up and they really need something that can resonate across the aisle. Also, it's that anchoring of why we're doing what we're doing and the humanity behind it all. Finally, I said again, it's central to an active faith, and it really complements individual actions. So we heard a lot today about the various levels we can act. And the industries who have the paid lobbyists who are in the halls of power every day want us to think that it's only our individual actions that can save the world. Our actions matter, and we need to create systemic change. So it's a both and situation, and we're actually really reclaiming our power when we look at corporate industrial polluters and hold them accountable. So I normally give hour-long workshops on faithful advocacy. I would love to visit your community to have a longer conversation. This is my contact information and Earth Ministries website. And if you want to come hang out with me in a breakout room, I can share a bit more about how we go about faithful advocacy. And we'll also send out some follow-up resources for you all. So thank you.